everybody. I'm going to see if we are officially live on Facebook here, so stand by. We are. Hello, Hen Johnson from England. Hello, Barbara from San Diego. All right, we are live, and welcome to another episode of Hollywood Kitchen. In particular, I am very excited about today's episode. So there are several ladies out there that I really admire. They have been blogging a lot longer about celebrity recipes and making these things, writing about them. They quite literally know their onions. And I have been inspired by all of them. So today is going to be like the Super Friends or Justice League first episode of the guacamole brackets. So given that the Olympics are going on right now, the Super Bowl is happening in Los Angeles today, which is why I'm so not leaving my neighborhood today. And also the March Madness basketball stuff, I assume, is coming. It was suggested to me by my friend Annette that it would be fun to take a whole bunch of celebrity guacamole recipes and do a bracket. I really don't know what brackets are or how they work, but luckily for me, Samantha Ellis does, and she gets the credit for setting up these brackets, and thank you for that. So today is going to be the old dark house bracket that Samantha came up with, and we are going to make the recipes of Boris Karloff and Gloria Stewart. We're going to see which one is the victor, and then we will move on to brackets. Depending, we're all kind of in different time zones, cities, etc. We have busy schedules. So we're going to try to do some of these over Zoom for the next month or so. Some of them might just be confined to social media. We shall see. We'll do what we can do. But for those of you who are new to classic Hollywood, Boris Karloff started out in silent film and became one of the most iconic faces in film history with 1931's Frankenstein. And then Bride of Frankenstein, he also voiced The Grinch Who Stole Christmas. And he probably remains one of the most famous icons of Hollywood history. And our next star today is going to be Gloria Stewart. She started out in film in the early 30s, I believe. She starred with Claude Rains in The Invisible Man, right? And she was with Boris Karloff in The Old Dark House, which we will be talking about. Other Gloria Stewart credits include she was in Roman Scandals with Eddie Cantor, Gold Diggers of 1935, and many of you may know her from, of course, after a long stretch, her turn as the Elder Rose in the blockbuster Oscar-winning film Titanic in 1997. She got a Best Supporting Actress Oscar nomination and kind of had a late career renaissance. So we're going to make both of these stars guacamole recipes, talk about their lives, talk about their careers, and have some fun. Now, the dream team. Oh yes, the dream team. So kicking off the dream team is Jenny Hamerton. She has been the original gangster of this stuff for 15, 16 years. She's been writing and blogging. She's been so cool about answering my many, many questions. And she's in England where she's a film archivist. She's written multiple cookbooks, including this gem, Supper with the Stars, with your host, Vincent Price. And she's currently writing a cookbook based on the Angela Lansbury TV series, Murder, She Cooked. Oh yes, that is going to be really awesome. Next up, we have Samantha Ellis. Samantha has also been blogging and writing about celebrity recipes for ages. And she blogs at Classic Movie Hub. She has a series called Cooking with the Stars. Am I getting this right, Samantha?
Mm-hmm.
She also co-hosts Ticklish Business, the film history podcast with my friend Kristen Lopez. And Samantha does plenty of stuff too to cook and spread the word about classic Hollywood, which is awesome. And then Fritzy, are you here? Fritzy?
I'm here. I'm just sick, so I'm here in my panda hoodie and kind of hiding.
Okay. Christy Kramer, our final superstar in the lineup here. Fritzy writes about movies at Movies Silently. She is a constant source of information about the silent era, which I, of course, have a huge affection for. And if you love silent film, you gotta follow Fritzy. And she also is cooking her way through the entire photoplay cookbook of 1929. So Fritzy does a column called Cooking with the Silent Stars, if I'm getting that right. Yes. So Fritzy, welcome to Hollywood Kitchen.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. All right. Are you going to sit off camera?
I am, if that's okay. I'm, like I said, I'm heavily medicated and kind of out of it, but I wanted to make sure I participated. So
Oh, thank you.
that's
Well,
all.
I'm happy to meet you and your guacamole. So the Gloria Stewart recipe, this was the hardest cookbook for me to find out of all of them. The famous star's favorite foods, which I have behind this plastic doohickey here. And does anybody know why it's called guacamole or guacamole?
It sounds like guacamole to me. I was like, what? It reminds me of Moon Over Miami, where Charlotte Greenwood has her whack-a-mole and she brings out the jar and it's red. And you're just like, what? What did they know about Mexican food in the 40s?
Well, you know how here in LA, El Coyote is probably one of our most famous Mexican restaurants, and it opened in 1931, the same year Frankenstein came out, you know, coincidentally. And I wonder like how much that kind of would have influenced celebrities, because it's such a famous place. It's still there. And it's the place where Sharon Tate ate her last meal anyway. But I kind of wonder, you know, how these food things go in trends. Yeah. Like if it was a trend to call it guacamole or whatever, if that was like a thing.
I think they just didn't know. Like everybody called it something different because they didn't know what the actual word was, I guess. That's just my assumption, but I don't know.
You know, you know what I should do? I know a few LA restaurant historians. Ooh, I just got an idea. I should try to see if they can cough up for me a 1930s menu from El Coyote, and we can see this guacamole.
That would be great.
Oh, okay. Note to self. I got to get on that. All right. But I kind of wonder too, because in the course of doing these, I've come across a lot of paprika recipes. And since there were so many Hungarians in Hollywood at the time, that seemed to be, I love following the trends, kind of seeing what was in vogue at the time.
Well, one of my favorite actresses is Zsa Zsa Gabor, so I hunt down all of her recipes, and I would honestly credit her with getting me into Hungarian food, and they all have paprika. And one of the most fascinating things I found out testing different old movie star recipes is that the two sisters had different definitions of what a green pepper was. I found that so fascinating. Like one meant, when they said green pepper, they meant a bell pepper. One meant a chili pepper, two totally different things. And it just says green pepper, so you don't really know. But it's fun looking at the differences.
You know, I've learned, because see, unlike you guys, I'm very new to this, and I just kind of started doing it for fun during the pandemic. And before that, I either ate out all the time, ate pre-prepared meals, or almost never cooked. So this has been a whole lifestyle shift around here. And I found that a lot of these cookbooks, it's almost like they're written for women who know exactly what they're doing in the kitchen. And there's a lot of stuff they leave out, which is probably why I've had so many disasters. So I'm like, I need hyper specific, like this is what you do, this is what you buy. And some of them, yeah, you're right about the green pepper. Like it'll just, there's a vagueness to some of these.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I'm sorry.
I have the added complication of being in the UK, where Mexican food, until fairly recently, we didn't have Mexican restaurants. You know, it's kind of a bit of an unknown quantity over here. So yeah, I have even more difficulty working out what these recipes mean.
And I know both of you try to make for one. I don't mind feeding an army and having leftovers. So I've always noticed both of you scaling down your recipes so much. I'm like, I could never do that. I just follow the recipe and whatever happens, happens. If something goes wrong, I blame the celebrity.
Here's the thing about mine. It's like, if there's some things that can travel well, like cookies. I do volunteering for an organization for homeless. So I can throw cookies into a huge Tupperware thing and donate them, and I can get it out of the house, and that's totally cool. And I'm happy to make a zillion cookies. But like when it's like a Hungarian goulash, it's sort of harder to like transport that around and share with people and stuff. So sometimes I do make the full batch, but so many times I wind up making it for one person. That's true.
Well, let me just say, there's enough guacamole now in my house to last me 2 weeks, probably.
That is so awesome. So I'm gonna investigate this whole guacamole issue and find out if that was a trend in the 30s to call it that.
Oh yeah.
And when was the first time you guys were aware of Gloria Stewart? We'll talk about her at the start of this episode.
For me, the first time was when I got this book that you also have, Kerry, which is fun. Yeah, I didn't really know much about Gloria Stewart, but fairly recently, my friend Mark Brissenden recommended her autobiography, which if you haven't read it, it's very saucy. She's quite a saucy woman.
Me too.
She dishes the dirt. She dishes the dirt. It's a really good read. So I do recommend this. Yeah.
Well, in the early 2000s or so, I went to a Q&A at the Egyptian Theater, and they showed The Invisible Man, and they showed Gold Diggers of 35, and they had her there for Q&A.
Wow.
And I was so excited. That's like
Wow.
one of the great advantages of living here, if you can stand the traffic and the outrageous prices and all that stuff. But the problem was she couldn't remember anything.
Oh.
People would ask her all these questions, and she's like, "I'm sorry, I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't remember." And I was just like I kind of wish they wouldn't have brought her to that. It was sort of one of those, she wasn't up to it, and it wasn't.
Or maybe just in the audience kind of thing, like Sidney Poitier for In the Heat of the Night that one year at the Classic Film Festival. But that's so amazing. I mean, either way, that's just amazing to see her in person. My first recollection of her, that's actually really difficult. I would say The Invisible Man is quite possibly maybe right behind Mystery of the Wax Museum as my favorite horror movie of all time. So I really love Gloria. I've definitely gotten to know about her. I covered her for one Cooking with the Stars post, and I didn't make this. I made a recipe that she had called Cream Vermont, and it was disgusting. It was so bad. I would say that's probably one of my biggest Cooking with the Stars fails. It was like, I have a pretty big sweet tooth. I can make something really sweet and still eat it. This was sickening. It was gross. I couldn't eat it. It was bad.
Fritzy, when did you first hear about Gloria Stewart?
I probably first saw her in Old Dark House. So, you know, I am staying on brand here. That was a pretty good introduction to her, because I think she had a pretty cliched role as, you know, the wife in the Old Dark House, but she made the most of what she had, you know, and that's always interesting to see, because sometimes stars don't rise above how they're cast, but in her case, she did her most with it. And I was going to say, yeah, I don't want to give away the ending too much, but I have a feeling that Gloria Stewart couldn't cook. Lovely woman, but couldn't cook.
Gloria Stewart, when as a little girl, I got obsessed with Universal horror films, which has led me to the whole life I live today. But I saw her in The Invisible Man, but I really didn't. I just kind of was so focused on the monster that I didn't pay that much attention. And then around the time I was getting out of, like, the month I graduated college is when Titanic came out, which I feel like 100 now. But anyway, and I saw her in Titanic, and I'd seen all these articles come out about her, and I thought, oh, she made all these old movies. I gotta see, you know, this stuff. So I saw her in Gold Diggers of 35, which, by the way, one of the things I do remember her saying is she really didn't work with Busby Berkeley. She doesn't do all the big dance numbers. She's in all the other scenes in the movie. So she had almost no recollections of him. Mm-hmm. But I saw her in The Invisible Man and Gold Diggers. And then The Old Dark House, I collect vintage fashion, and that's kind of one of my obsessions. And that white bias cut gown is everything that she wears in that movie. And apparently James Well had said he wanted her to look like a white flame. And boy, does she, you know, I mean, being in this pouring, rainy, freezing cold, old dark house in this gorgeous white silk dress, and you're like, it just stands out, and it looks beautiful the way that dress kind of moves on her. And yeah, that's a great film.
Yeah, I was talking to my sister last night about it, because last night was actually the first time I've seen The Old Dark House. I've seen many Universal movies, but this was a first time watch for me. And I remembered after watching it that my sister wanted to see it with me, and she was so upset. She's like, well, how did you like it? And I said, Gloria Stewart is the ultimate scream queen, for one thing, in this film. And she was like, okay, well, when should I watch it? And I said, wait until the darkest and the rainiest night you have. She lives in Florida, so that's going to happen often.
Oh, yeah.
And then watch it, and it'll totally heighten the experience. So, but yeah, I loved the film. I was so excited to finally see it. It was really high up on my watch list, because you can't beat the cast.
I watched it last week with a friend on Amazon Prime in the UK do this watch party thing. I don't know whether it's the same in the States. So she lives a long way from me, and we watched it together, and we just thought it was fabulous. We loved it. And I loved the scene where they're eating the roast beef with pickled onions.
And they say, have a potato.
Yes, potato. Potato is repeated, isn't it? Yeah. The potatoes are massive. They have like one huge potato with their roast beef. I love that.
I love that movie too. And by the way, if I don't know if it's available in the UK, but in America, Cohen Media did a beautiful DVD release of that movie.
That print is on Tubi for free to stream.
Okay.
And that's what I watched last night. I was gushing to my sister. The print is amazing. It looks like you're watching a Blu-ray, even though it's streaming. So I was really, really lucky to see it in such good quality. I didn't expect it.
It's so good. And I love the old dark house genre in general, because there's always the cars breaking down on the road and it's pouring rain. And what are we going to do? Obviously, cell phones don't exist then. So they hike up and they find the house. It's like there's a formula to all of them, but they're so darn much fun to watch. Oh my gosh.
The comedy in them, there's always humor along with the horror. That's one of my favorite things about it. Because the genre got its start in the silent era with things like Seven Keys to Baldpate and The Cat and the Canary and the Ghost Breaker. And they always have just like this kind of quirky sense of humor where even though the genre is kind of new, they're almost lampshading it constantly. And I find that really charming that they were so self-aware even from the very start.
This is a little off topic, but that's okay. If you have never seen it, have you guys seen The Last Warning?
Yes.
I haven't even heard of that one.
Oh, good.
I'm a Paul Linney fan. Paul Linney was a German director who came to Hollywood, and he only made a handful of films, and he died of blood poisoning very suddenly. It was really sad. But he made The Man Who Laughs with Conrad Veidt, which is a masterpiece. And then he made The Last Warning, and I was lucky enough to get to see it on film a few years back here, well, pre-pandemic. Anyway, and I kept looking at the sets going, that set looks so darn familiar. Why is that? And someone goes, well, Carrie, that was the Phantom of the Opera set at Universal. They made this like 2 years after Phantom. And I was like, oh, no wonder I got so excited, And I think Last Warning was his last film. Fritzy, back me up on that if I'm not mistaken.
I don't remember if it was The Last Warning or The Chinese Parrot, but yeah, it was a very, it was a late era one for him. And The Cat and the Canary is one of my favorite silent films of all time. It's like classical dark house, secret passages, clawed hands reaching from the walls, grabbing people, but it also has the humor. Yeah, he was so creative. I just love his stuff. And Old Dark House is in that spirit, and I love that spirit. And then they kind of sort of remade it in House of the Long Shadows, which was kind of also a remake of Seven Keys to Baldpate, which had Vincent Price and John Carradine and Peter Cushing. And that was another dream team horror.
I was going to say that's the horror dream team right there. I love all of them.
But then they decided to focus on Desi Arnaz Jr. for some reason. So there you go. Hollywood.
Well, Last Warning, I think it is available on DVD if you can get your hands on a copy. And it's kind of got incredible cinematography. It's very German expressionist, and it's got the sense of humor. And instead of an old dark house, it's an old dark theater where all the action and all the drama kind of unfolds. But one thing I love about James Whale, who directed The Old Dark House, of course, is his wicked sense of humor. Like, someone asked me recently, I was on a film blogger Zoom thingy, and someone said, if all of you could have any director from Hollywood's golden age make the story of your life, who would you pick and why? And my answer was James Whale. And I said, why? And I go, he understands the Gothic and he understands the absurd. My life is both of those things.
That is a fantastic answer. I wouldn't have even thought of that, but he was so inventive. The thing that I noticed and really appreciated when I was watching this, not only with the humor, but also his use of shadow and lighting, I think, in this film was really, really fantastic. I built up an appreciation for that from watching Michael Curtiz films. And I definitely see almost a pseudo Curtiz here with a lot of the shadows in this. And I hate to get too off topic from our 2 stars that we're focusing on today. My favorite thing about this whole movie was Melvin Douglas. I am a Melvin Douglas 30s romantic comedy fiend, and he's perfect. He's walking into this out of a 30s romantic comedy and changing nothing. He's like the only American. He has the love story, he has the humor, and everyone around him is just doom and gloom, and I love it.
One of my favorite James Will moments too is I love that in The Invisible Man when Claude Rains is skipping down with a picnic basket singing, "Here we go gathering flowers in May, flowers in May." There's just this wacky sense of humor that kind of pulsates through all of his films. And oh, God bless him. I love him for that.
Yeah, I was so disappointed when I read about the falling out between he and Boris Karloff while making this. I feel, and not to mention, I was even more upset when I read that Gloria Stewart didn't really care for Karloff either when they were making this film. She thought that he was self-absorbed. And I can kind of see it when I was reading the trivia on The Invisible Man. One of the reasons why he didn't work in that was because it was another non-speaking role, and he really wanted to get away from those. And I could see, I mean, he has an incredible speaking voice, so I would understand why he would want to bring that to the table.
Yeah.
Well, it came out the year right after Frankenstein too, so I kind of wonder like if it was overwhelming, because he was like this working character actor for like ages before he made Frankenstein. So it kind of like you go from being working character actor to mega star like that fast. That's gonna be messing with your head in terms of, wait a minute, why? Like, you know what I mean? You kind of wonder how much that would have affected him. There's a brand new biography that I haven't read yet, but I need to. It's a full-length life biography about Boris Karloff by Gordon Shriver. So I need to get my hands on a copy of that soon. But yeah,
We on our podcast on Ticklish Business, we did a whole episode about the sexiest classic film stars, and I came in with Boris Karloff. Out of the makeup, out of the costume, he was a very attractive man. I have a huge appreciation for him and like his whole career. I hate to say it, I'm gonna be the one to bring this up. In the whole Bella versus Boris debate, I am definitely Team Boris. I feel like Boris could do anything.
he could. One thing that drives me nuts about film history though is like how people always pit people against each. It's like you Betty or Joan, or you Bella or Boris, or you Charlie versus Buster. And it's like
Astaire and Kelly.
Why can't I love both? Like they each offer something different. They're different people, different personalities. My heart is big. There is enough room for all. Like that's how I look at it. So and I just feel like women too, like you're constantly pitted against each other in our society. I freaking hate that and I reject it. So I love having women friends that we talk about our work and inspire and encourage each other. Like I'm more about that than the bitchy catty. I mean, watching the women is fun. Living the women is probably not fun.
Right.
My personal attitude on
I
it.
would never want to meet Rosalind Russell in The Women in my life. I hope I never come across a person like that.
I would leave the powder room and run right out of the nightclub. Like, yeah, it's the Women is like a movie where with friends like that, you do not need enemies, kind of applies there. But so shall we start Gloria Stewart's Guacamole?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
From reading this recipe, it looks to me like it's kind of more of a salad dressing that she's going for here.
Mhm.
Now, Fritzy, you were telling us that you're going to do something that personally I have never seen happen in my life, and that's juicing an onion. So can you weigh in on how you did that for us?
I threw everything in my Vitamix and set it to 10. And it came out, it's separating. I didn't go to the full, the full like juice level because I like my guacamole with a little bit of chunkiness to it, but the oil is now separating. So serve this right away if you don't want to scare people any more than you will be already. I just fair warning, this is terrible. I'm sorry, Gloria. I'm sorry for spoiling you.
Wow.
It didn't come out well, but yeah, so that's what I did. I guesstimated how much of an onion because she wants you to do like a whole onion, but then she says use the juice to taste. So I just used a quarter and it's very oniony. So just fair warning, start slowly.
All right, well, I'm gonna go ahead and make mine in front of you because that's kind of what I attempt on these things. I'm making an even smaller amount now after hearing your review. So, all right, I've got my avocado that I mashed up in here. Okay, I love how in her thing she says take dead ripe avocados. Like,
I noticed that. I like the horror verbiage.
speaking of which, any excuse to get out my coffin-shaped chip and dip serving platter I got from Pier One right before they went out of business. Pier One
That's fabulous.
even comes with a skull serving cup, which any excuse.
Yeah.
Okay. Dead ripe avocados, mashed throughout a sieve until no lumps are left. I do not have a sieve, nor could I locate one.
I bought one for this, and this was the most difficult part. It was extremely needless, in my opinion. Oh, it was so hard. I guess maybe the one I got was too fine, but I'll show you how mine turned out. This is my Gloria.
Okay.
And
Yeah, you ended up chunky too.
yeah, mine ended up a bit chunky because I put like one of the 3 avocados that I used in through this sieve, and I was like barely getting anything. I was just making a mess. I was like, okay, I'm ditching this, and I'm using a rubber spatula, and I ended up, my avocados were pretty ripe, and I just smoothed it out as much as I could, and I still feel like it turned out pretty well. I actually haven't tried the Gloria one yet. I did try the Boris one after I made it.
Could you do me a favor and send me a photo of a sieve? Because I'm learning as I go along. I don't even totally know what a sieve is, to be honest.
I'm laughing
It's
so
a little
much.
strainer.
I'm laughing so much because we'd call it a sieve, not a sieve.
To be honest with you, I didn't know. I've heard both.
I have it and I didn't want to wash it.
I'm English.
I was with a British friend one day at a grocery store a long time ago, and she kept going, well, Carrie, we need to get Rocket. And I'm like, they don't sell toys here. It's a grocery store. She's like, we have to buy Rocket. And I'm like, that's a kid store down the street. What are you talking? She's like, Rocket is like a lettuce. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that.
Arugula.
I didn't know she kept calling it Rocket. I'm like, why does she?
We call it rocket here. That's a problem with a lot of American recipes. We call things different things here. Zucchini, courgettes, all that stuff.
We would be happy to help if you ever need like.
I might need some translation sometimes.
I
I
think
put mine through a sieve.
The comments are telling us that it is sieve, and I'm just pronouncing it wrong. So.
Sieve. I don't know.
Don't mean to, I don't know. I call it a sieve, but it might be a sieve. I don't know. But I put mine through.
Oh, yours looks way better than mine. Okay.
Yeah, because it's very smooth. If you put it through a sieve, I use a spatula, and I had a metal sieve. I think a plastic sieve would be hard. But
Yeah, I had a very fine, small. It was about this big, metal sieve, and I think it might have been too fine, or maybe my avocado wasn't quite soft enough, but it just wasn't happening.
It wasn't sufficiently dead.
I'm gonna add.
It wasn't dead enough. The avocados still had some life in them.
Olive oil into the guac, or the avocado here. Then I could not squeeze onions. I tried to mash them up as best as I could. So I'm gonna add some of the onions here to this. Okay, and then for the juice, beat same in to taste. That's weird wording there, but I'm gonna try to stir this now. And then salt and pepper. I have salt and pepper Tombstone salt and pepper shakers.
Those are so cute.
Halloween Town in Burbank. You can order them online too. They're awesome. Okay, salt, pepper to taste. Okay. Beat in a chili pepper. So I'm gonna put in a little bit of chili pepper here. And then I'm gonna stir it. Stir it up here. And sprinkle paprika on top. This is the first time I've seen a guac recipe with paprika on top, but we'll go for it.
They wanted to avoid anything as frightening as spice.
All right. So at the end, after we've made both guacs, I will take my blue corn chips and I will we'll do a taste test on camera if you guys want
Yeah.
to.
Definitely. Like I said, I haven't tried the Gloria one yet, so I'm really excited.
Alrighty, let's see. So we've made Gloria's and we will set that aside. But when I post the final blog post I do on these lately, I've been trying to do like a whole little list of movie posters at the bottom. So if people want to track down some of the movies of Gloria Stewart, and I try to pick ones that are all available. So you can, look at the poster and go, oh, I want to see, and kind of, I love encouraging people to watch stuff that they've never watched, or, that's one of the things that gives me joy about the cemetery tour is just when a 20-year-old girl texts me, I'm watching Peter Lorre's M right now. I'm like, that's why I woke up today. Thank you. So,
Yeah.
that's awesome. All right, so now we're going to make Boris's. When did you guys first hear about Boris? Because it's hard to remember a time when I didn't, but
I can definitely say the same. I mean, I think probably everybody knows Frankenstein even as a kid.
oh yeah.
So you don't necessarily put the face to the name. Bless you. But yeah, absolutely. I've known Boris as long as I can remember, I would say. And I think as an adult, I've gotten the newfound appreciation for him. I try to track down all of the deep cuts of Boris at this point. I know when we were talking about Boris on the podcast, I mentioned The Lost Patrol, which I don't know if you guys have seen, but that is my Boris recommendation. Aside from his horror films, he's fantastic in that. And then every year I watch the animated Grinch every year. And I love it even more knowing that he did the narration and voiced the Grinch. But that's I would say my background with Boris.
Jenny, what's your background with Boris?
Well, when I was a preteen, I think I was quite young. Here in the UK, they used to put horror films on very late at night on a Saturday, and I used to beg my parents to let me watch them. And everyone in the house would have gone to bed. I'm the youngest of 5 kids. Everyone else in bed, and I'd be lying on the sofa trying to stay awake to watch these old horror films. So yeah, I think that was the first time. Yeah, and then recently, working on the Vincent Price book, I saw The Raven. I'd never seen The Raven, and I was laughing so much. It's such a funny film, so I love him in The Raven. And yeah, I mean, he's iconic, isn't he? And he's so English in a lot of ways. I love the fact that he played cricket in Hollywood. He was in a cricket team in Hollywood.
That is so cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think David Niven might have been in it. It's all English actors who were in Hollywood at the same time playing cricket together.
That is so awesome. Fritzy, what was your intro to Boris?
It was actually my dad got us a VHS copy of Arsenic and Old Lace when I was 4, and Boris Karloff's not in it, but he's constantly mentioned. He looked like Boris Karloff. So of course, we're like, oh, and they explained, oh, it's Frankenstein. And I think even then we knew who it was. So, I mean, I don't remember the actual conversation, but that's my earliest memory of hearing Boris Karloff is Arsenic and Old Lace. And then later I saw Frankenstein, and I saw him in, I absolutely love him in The Black Cat. He's so twisted and, quite handsome. And and then I started watching some of his silent stuff, which isn't always, he had to eat, but he had one really interesting role in The Bells in 1926, where he played kind of a Dr. Caligari ripoff. And it's really fascinating to see what he does with it, because he's very definitely channeling German expressionist acting in this role. And I saw later he actually did a radio play version of The Bells, and I'm assuming by that point, because this was the 30s, he played the lead rather than just the supporting character. So I'm actually looking to track that down. Oh, and I finally saw the version of Arsenic and Old Lace where he plays Jonathan for a TV movie. So that was exciting too.
I have a question, Fritzy. Here in Hollywood, we have a thing called Silence Under the Stars. I don't know if you've ever been here for it, but where they show it on the historic Paramount Ranch. They show a silent on a big screen outdoors, and people bring picnics. Unfortunately, we had a wildfire and the ranch burned down. So yeah, I cried. It was horrible. But anyway, they've been determined to keep it going. So the last couple of years, they've done them virtually, right? And a year or two ago, I think we were on lockdown, but anyway, they did a virtual event and they got Sarah Karloff, his daughter, to talk. And they showed a Boris Karloff silent, and I know you're probably going to know the name of it. I can't remember what it was called, but he's like a lumberjack.
Oh,
Like this huge lumberjack in this silent film. And I'm trying to think of the name of it.
I have not seen all of his silent roles, so it's not ringing a bell, but I know he did like an absolute ton of Westerns. He was really in demand as a Western villain. So, and a lot of the Western stars would make lumberjack films just as a change of pace because they actually just had to change out their hat.
And he was like a
They
villain
didn't have to
who
buy
was
anything
wearing
new.
plaid.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I don't know which one it was, but yeah, I'm sure he probably, it was probably something along that line, but I'll have to track it down and see if I can find it.
Okay.
That is so
Yeah.
fascinating. I'm trying to picture Boris Karloff in a Western and I can't visualize it, but I need to track that down.
I'll look
I
up
think-
the internet and send it to you guys, because if they streamed it for a virtual event, I would assume that there's some availability there.
Oh, I'm sure that there is.
My
And-
first exposure to Boris, I was born Halloween night, and around my, I think it's my 5th or 6th birthday, I saw Dracula on TV with Bela Lugosi. It's the first film I remember seeing, and that's changed the course of my life. And every Sunday around 1 o'clock, they had the horror movie matinee. So if I didn't fight with my brother, and I was good all week, I could watch the horror movie matinee. So I saw Dracula, and then Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, The Wolf Man. I saw all those kind of on succession on Sunday afternoons, and I was just fascinated. And Boris, it's totally obvious too to me, he was a silent film actor, because there's so much he does just with his eyes, just with his hand movements and his gesture. I mean, like it's really a silent film performance in Frankenstein, truly. And he's so mesmerizing in that film, and I just was fascinated by him in that. And then of course, as with these movies, it kind of leads you down the rabbit hole of seeing him in all these other horror films down the road. And I've always admired him and been a fan. And also a few years ago, I got to see The Criminal Code from the early 30s, which is like a gangster film from like, I think 31 or so, or maybe 30. Anyway, but he plays a gangster in it. And he's very good. And it's fun to see him do something outside the horror genre that he's so good in. And this would have been pretty close to the time of Frankenstein too. So it's kind of fun to see him go in such a different direction.
That's one of the things that I appreciate about Boris the most. I think he's such a professional. When he's on screen, you can just see the experience and see the life that he lived, even really before he took off as a star. I know when I wrote about him in my column, I mentioned that Frankenstein was his 81st credit. So it's kind of insane to think about that.
Yeah.
Because that's what a lot of people might think of as his first or one of.
I assume that film probably kind of changed his life, because to have worked that much for that long. And
well, as Fritzy sort of touched on too, he really worked as an actor to put food on the table. Before that, he would dig ditches. He did anything he had to do to survive. So it's not like a lot of stars we know today where he got the acting bug and wanted to do it his whole life or anything like that. He just kind of fell into it to earn money. And he took so many roles as extras, so many of the smaller, so many of the villainous roles that nobody else really wanted. And by this point, he was experienced, he was aged before he even appeared in Frankenstein, much less the long, decades-long career he would have after that.
he's so good. He's one of my favorites. He's one of those people that I could just listen to his voice without even seeing his face and still just be transfixed.
His voice is my favorite thing about him. I love his voice.
If he picked up a box of cereal and read the ingredients on the back, I'd be like,
Me too.
So on to his guacamole recipe, ladies. I have made this multiple times for a standalone Boris episode. I did a little virtual Halloween party, I thought it'd be fun to do a virtual party and do a little smackdown of the Boris and Vincent Price, which I know a lot of people have done before me. I just wanted to do my own little version for fun. But the thing that has always thrown me about this recipe is the presence of the sherry. At first, I thought maybe that's a
English.
Phoenix thing, and a friend is like, "No, it's not." I was like, "Okay, maybe that's a 30s thing." And what's up? Do any of you know what the purpose of the sherry in the guacamole really is?
It's a reason for you to get your sherry out from the drinks cupboard and have a little sherry while you're making the guacamole, which is what I did. Is sherry a very English thing? I don't know. Is it?
And not to my knowledge.
I always associate it. I don't know. I think I see in so many. I think I watch too many sitcoms where they're offering sherry, and it just cracked me up. So I
Yeah,
was like,
it's a very English thing to have like a sherry before dinner. It's
yeah.
So maybe
so I think
I
an
will
English.
mention, I know Jenny has her fair share of not being able to find stuff that she needs for recipes. I could not find sherry in my grocery store. They did not have it. And I looked up substitutes. What I actually used in my Karloff guac, which I'll show too, is I used apple cider vinegar, which I heard is an acceptable substitute, which might be a little strange, maybe as strange as sherry, but that's what I used. And I did try this and it turned out very well, in my opinion. Maybe not Vincent Price or Ramon Navarro, which we'll get to later in the bracket, but I really do like it.
Well, here's my opinion. I could finding stuff, especially in the pandemic, the supply chain. It's been a challenge. Oh, yours looks great. But I found cooking wine sherry, and I'm like, well, close enough. Jenny,
I
is
think
it
that's
close
what they
enough?
mean. I want to say that's what they mean.
but a
Okay.
good sherry is so nice. I'm just, yeah.
So I'm gonna go ahead and mix this up now. So I've got my mashed avocados right here, which every time I do make this Boris thing, I always think about how apparently the actual makeup for Frankenstein was bright green. And I saw Kevin Brownlow did this amazing, he's my hero. He did this amazing documentary about the history of Universal horror several years ago. It's probably on the internet. I know it's on DVDs too, and they showed some behind the scenes footage of Jack Pierce working on Boris. And yeah, it was like bright green. And then of course the Grinch green too. So I always think about green with Boris. So I've got my medium tomato finely chopped. Put that in here. We've got a small onion minced. I go a little light on the onion myself. Okay, we've got green chilies, which I will add right now. Then we have lemon juice. Lemon juice. 1 teaspoon of sherry. All right, here goes the sherry. I have personally found when I've made this in the past that the chilies and the onion kind of obliterate the taste of the sherry.
Yeah.
If I'm honest.
That's
I
why I
agree.
agree with Jenny's theory that it's just an excuse to give yourself a little sherry, which I appreciate and respect.
Dash of cayenne pepper,
Had to be done.
Headstone salt and pepper.
I should remind everybody that it is the evening here in London. I'm not drinking sherry at midday, although I sometimes might do, but it was about 7 o'clock when I had the sherry.
No problem. Well, the sherry kind of does give it a little bit of it makes it easier to kind of blend it all together. It's kind of a blending agent, I guess, if you will.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is what my final product looked like.
Nice.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So ladies, should we get our corn chips and do a taste and render which guacamole we find to be the best? I know where this is going to be going, but just I feel like we should do it to be official. Know what I mean? Okay, I'm going to start with Gloria Stewart. Drum roll, please. Very oniony.
Oniony.
Whoa, very, very oniony. Yeah.
Oily.
And oily and oniony, yes. Samantha, what say you? Oh, Gloria Stewart.
I got the oil for sure, and then I was hit with the chili pepper. I used a whole chili pepper.
Oh wow, you're brave. Christy?
But I think I like that there's not too many ingredients.
Okay.
Yeah, it's easy.
It's
Do you have
pretty,
a-
it's oniony and oily, so I'm sorry, Gloria.
We know where
I'm
this is.
sorry.
Okay, now
This
for
is why we
Boris.
need the sherry.
So we're gonna do short. All right, now for Boris. Okay, bottoms up. We declare Boris, I declare Boris the winner here. I think we're all unanimous on this decision, right?
Yes.
I would
Okay.
agree with that.
Boris is the winner.
More flavoursome. There's lots of different flavours going on in the Boris, isn't there? It's good.
It
Yeah.
tastes fresher to me too, I think.
I love tomatoes, so I love the chunky tomato kind of.
I was worried that I didn't dice my tomato fine enough, but I think it actually helps.
Yeah.
To learn knife
stuff.
skills. I would
just
love
wanna
to be
keep
one of those
eating the
people
Boris
who
one.
can just.
Delish.
Okay, ladies, so I'm gonna start with Jenny, Samantha, and then Fritzy. So in the time you've been making all of these celebrity recipes, I'm gonna ask each of you, which one is like the biggest hit that you're like, this is the most incredible recipe? And which one where you're like, wow, that was such a hot mess, I can't believe that happened. So Jenny, start out with it, tell us. I'm just gonna eat while y'all talk now, so.
Okay, my absolute favourite movie star recipe is Elizabeth Taylor's chicken steamed in white wine. It's just so easy, so delicious, so fabulous, and I love Elizabeth Taylor. So that is my favourite. The biggest disaster, the worst thing I'd ever made is Ginger Rogers butterscotch date pudding. That was so disgusting, but mostly because it had tapioca in it. I mean, there's no need for tapioca in a pudding, in my opinion.
That makes me want to try it now, to be honest.
Oh my
I'll
god.
send you the recipe if you haven't already got it.
I think it's in the same book as the cream Vermont.
Probably. Is it in the Norge refrigerator?
Yes, it is. Yeah,
Yes,
all those
it's
lovely
so
40s
fun.
ladies in one book.
It's the same book. It's
I
in
have to say,
there.
though, I did a Ginger Rogers recipe a while back with my friend Janet Klein, who sings teens, 20s, and 30s music. And we made Ginger Rogers grape mint punch. That was so good. In fact, Janet
That's
keeps
from
it
the
on-
same book.
Yeah, same book, the Norge refrigerator book, and from 1934. And Janet makes it all the time, and anytime you go to her house, she offers you, "Would you like some Ginger Rogers mint punch?" So
I'm writing
that
that
was-
down.
I gotta say, that was pretty much a triumph, that one. So I give Ginger a win column for that one, but then another mark in the loss column for the butterscotch
The
pudding.
peanut parsley sandwiches, the Ginger Rogers peanut parsley sandwiches in the same book. They're quite good.
Yeah, I like those little finger sandwiches. I thought those were pretty good. So
I haven't tried any Ginger Rogers recipes yet. I really want to because I adore her, absolutely love her. But every time I hear somebody making one of her recipes, it turns out horribly. So I'm a little worried.
well, I like the grape mint punch too because you can kind of make it a little more subtle if you want. You can futz with it a little bit. Like I made mine a little light on the grape and kind of a little more on the mint and with a little twist of lemon. It almost would be like a fabulous cocktail too. So if you wanted to add booze to it. So I would recommend if you just have a free moment of tinkering with that recipe and I had a
You
good
could
time
put a
on
bit
it.
of sherry in it.
I can
You're cooking sherry, Kerry. You could put a bit of your cooking sherry in
I
it.
really can't drink due to health and kidney stuff, but I would love to do. I would love if someone did like Hollywood cocktail and just made all these cocktail recipes. Like last year, I did an Oscar cook along, and one of my TCM buddies, Teresa Brown in New York, she logged in with a few cocktail recipes or cocktails based on stars. So I hope somebody does that because like videos or something. It's so much fun to do those.
I have a really beautiful book. I don't remember the exact title, but I believe it's Cocktails of the Movies that has really all through movie history. It has cocktails, but it's not so much the stars recipes as the cocktail that appears in this scene of this movie. And I really love that one.
I think I've got that. I'm gonna go and grab it. Might be the
Beautifully
same.
illustrated.
I'm actually really hungry.
I know it's been so hard like staring at these two guacamoles for an hour.
Is it this
Oh,
one?
It's not that one, but that one looks excellent.
Yeah, it's like it's scenes from
Here, I can
movie.
grab it really quick. Actually, I have it right here. I'll hold it up for the audience to see.
Yeah, I think I think this was produced in the UK. It's a beautiful book. It's
This one's mine, Cocktails of the Movies.
Oh, I
But
haven't seen
the
that.
illustrations are beautiful. Let me find an old one, an old movie star one, because there are quite a few modern
You
too.
have to send me the
Here's
color
William
copies.
Powell.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're
Oh,
beautiful.
brilliant. Oh, lovely.
Yeah, this one's from The Thin Man.
Oh,
I have another
beautiful.
one, but I don't know where it is. I'd have to go look for it, which may take a while. But send me covers of those ladies. I'd love to post about them so people can kind of track down certain.
Definitely. I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
So Samantha, okay, so your best was Elizabeth Taylor's chicken and white wine. Your worst was Ginger Rogers butterscotch pudding. Okay, Samantha, how about you?
Okay, I gasped when Jenny talked about Elizabeth Taylor, because my favorite is Elizabeth Taylor chicken with avocado and mushrooms. That's the best that I've ever done. In the recipe she asked for a pretty small chicken. So I bought a Cornish game hen instead, and it turned out beautifully. It was like rich, but I believe it also has white wine in it, and the avocado and the mushrooms and the wine sauce. It was excellent. That's definitely, I could eat that all day. My worst, I believe I mentioned right before we started the stream, I spent 5 hours making a Boris Karloff steak and kidney pie, and separating out those kidneys, just dealing with that raw meat for such a long time. And I never dealt with kidneys.
Oh.
It was brutal. I can never get the smell of raw kidney out of my nose.
Samantha, I've actually been in the hospital a couple times in my life with kidney problems. I can never make or eat anything with kidneys. I have a thing about kidneys because it's like, no, not that.
So I would say that was up there. That was pretty horrific. And then honestly, the cream Vermont. So it's kind of unfortunate that the 2 stars we're talking about today are 2 of the worst recipes I've made, but luckily not these 2 recipes.
Fritzy, how about you? What is your best and what is your worst celebrity recipe?
Well, I think my favorite recipes are the ones where it's like you crack open this forgotten technique, or at least forgotten, in my neck of the woods. William S. Hart had a recipe for summer squash with an egg poached inside the squash. And
Whoa.
It just started me on this. It's so good because the summer squash it has that sweetness. So the egg is so delicate, and then you top it with white sauce and cheese and breadcrumbs. And this whole thing of poaching eggs inside vegetables, they did it with potatoes, they did it with tomatoes. I'm like, this is great. I love this. Why aren't we doing this all the time?
Jerome
And
Power has an avocado one with an egg in it.
Yeah, I love that idea. I love it. It just it makes me so happy to eat that. And then also Jeannie McPherson's stuffed tomato. She was Cecil B. DeMille's resident screenwriter, and she did this tomato stuffed with seafood salad. And again, that's I think less unfamiliar to people than the egg poaching, but I still love putting salads inside hollowed out tomatoes. It makes me very happy. So that's the kind of thing I enjoy making. My biggest disasters, some of them are my fault because I didn't realize you can't use lower fat dairy in vintage recipes because they rely on that fat. So I made these absolutely disastrous waffles from I don't remember which actress, but I think it was Betty Bronson. And I said, oh, they're horrible, they're awful. And then afterwards I'm looking like, yeah, 2% milk, of course they're awful. You could kill someone with these things. And but the worst recipe I've ever run into is Victor McLanglin's chili con carne with a cup of flour. And I mean, I understand that masa is a traditional thickener. People do thicken their chili, but it wasn't a big batch. And it ended up with this paste, and it was so gross. I'm like, I could only taste like a little bit, and it was just like, why, Victor? Why did you do this to us? What were you thinking, man? So that's my worst.
Fritzy, on an unrelated note, well, sort of related. Have you ever been to the William S. Hart Museum and House? Because I have actually
no.
not ever gotten to that, and it's like a bucket list goal for me. So
No, and I don't actually live that far from there, so I really don't have an excuse.
you should go.
But yeah, it looks great, and I'm so glad that they're like trying to push his movies. Actually, San Francisco Silent Film Festival is screening a special on the restoration of his lost films today.
Yes, I love them. I've gone to that festival like for the last 20 years or so, and I'm hoping that it will get to proceed in May. Fingers so tightly crossed.
Oh, I hope so too.
Oh my gosh.
You know, they work so hard, you know.
Yes.
I want them to have it.
And I know, Jenny, you're involved with the Silent Film Festival, the Hip Fest in Boness.
Yeah, beautiful Hip Fest. What a lovely festival that is.
It's a silent film festival, if I may brag about Jenny's awesomeness. It's a silent film festival. They were virtual. And as part of the festival, they showed Mary Pickford's Sparrows. They streamed it. And then Jenny made Mary Pickford's enchiladas on camera, which I was totally watching that.
It's very weird because I've actually made some of those this evening because I thought I've got guacamole. What else am I going to make? So yeah, I made some again today. It's a really good recipe. They're delicious, the Mary Pickford enchiladas. But again, I don't really know how to make enchiladas because I'm English.
That sounds so good though. I only discovered Sparrows for the first time last year and I loved it.
Such a great film. Such a great film. That was a revelation to me actually, because I sort of thought I didn't really rate Mary Pickford very much, but then I saw that and I thought, wow, yeah, you know, she's fabulous.
Mary Pickford's been a huge part of my sort of classic film upbringing because she was a big part of Palm Springs where I grew up in California. They have the Mary Pickford Theater there. And I always like heard her name. I believe she has a star on their Walk of Fame too. So I was always like curious about her. My grandmother called me a couple of months ago and she's like, oh yeah, I met this guy. He does documentaries and it's the director of the Mary Pickford Muse of the Movies documentary. She's like, oh, I should get you in touch or whatever. I'm like, wow, I've seen that documentary. It's so great.
Yeah.
She was just I admire her not just as an actress but a producer, as a businesswoman. I mean,
yeah,
I saw one documentary about her. I think it was Scott Emin was commenting. He said she could have run the U.S. Steel Corporation had she wanted to, because she had that much like business acumen, and this whole town wouldn't be what it is without her. I mean, her contributions to the film industry are monumental.
I am in the 1% camp that loves Coquette. Everybody else is like, Coquette's horrible. She's awful in it. I'm like, I love Coquette. It's my favorite Mary Pickford movie.
I think mine of hers is My Best Girl. I love that one.
I like Stella Maris.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
I like the dark and the dual roles and, you know, lots of death. And I like to tell people it fails the reverse Bechdel test, where there's more than one man and they have names, but they don't talk about anything but the women. So
the reverse.
That's so great.
yeah. So there's pretty much no male presence in it outside of the women. You know, it's all in relation to the women. So take that.
Very nice.
Getting back to the best and worst, I think I've had a lot of flops because again, I'm just learning by the seat of my pants as I do all this stuff. And a lot of times this is the first or second time I've cooked whatever item it is. I think the best ones I've tried so far, I think the Anne Blythe muffin recipe was just because it was so specific. It was like, so I was like, there's no way I'm going to screw this up. And if I do, there's no hope for me. So the fact that turned out so well was amazing. And then when I did the Barbara Stanwyck episode for Christmas, I had my friend Lara Gabriel was on Zoom from San Francisco, and Danny and I were here in LA, and we decided to also, in addition to making the Barbara Stanwyck kitfuls, we're like, well, she mentions popovers and remember the night, let's make popovers. So I ordered a popover tin and I found a Dorothy McHale popover recipe. And I think at one of the photo play cookbooks online I saw. Oh my God. They were so simple to make. They were so delicious. Danny and I ate the whole tray of them after we went off Zoom. We were just like, and then his wife came in and then she started eating. And next thing we know, it was like a frenzy of hot bread. It was crazy. But those were both super simple. The directions were, I could not mess those up. So those were both amazing. I've had a lot of bad ones. I'm a big Norma Shearer fan too, and one of my friends is like the ultimate Norma Shearer expert. So we've gone to the well that is Norma a lot of times, and we tried her sweet pineapple salad, which is basically green Jello, pineapple, olives, and mayonnaise. And I'm like, I'm not eating that.
Oh my God.
And Darren's like, I'm not eating it either. And Darren's husband's like, I'll eat it. So then I whipped out my camera, we filmed him eating it, and we were just like, we're not touching that, but you go for it.
I
You
think
like
I
it?
love Norma so much that I would have to try it.
We didn't even do a standalone episode for that because it was just such an ill-advised thing to eat. Then we did Norma Shearer's oatmeal sticks, which basically, if I crumpled up like this piece of paper and ate it, it would be the same exact thing. I mean, there's no flavor to it at all. So you had to pour so much cinnamon and sugar in there to get anything out of that. I did an episode on Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin, and I tried to make Dean Martin's burgundy chicken. And I posted, I'm just admitting when I really screwed up, and I posted pictures and I did the episode, and it was an absolute disaster. And I was going to even cancel the episode because I was so upset about how it turned out. And then I thought, it's Jerry Lewis. I mean, the fact that it's a disaster is kind of on brand. And I don't know if flex on them, we do it. So I'm like, I'm just going to go with the flow. So I just copped to how bad it was immediately. And Rick, I have a lot of friends who've written these books, and I'd love to help promote the book and do whatever I can to put the word out. So the actual book on Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin's coming out in April. So we're going to do what I call the course correct on Dean Martin's burgundy chicken. And I'm going to try it again. Because once I posted the recipe, my friend Ruth, she helps me like behind the scenes on some of these. She texted me and she's like, Carrie, that's not a complete recipe. No wonder you're in trouble. I was like, what do you mean it's not complete? She's like, it's not complete. Talk to me later. And I was like, okay. So she and I are going to drive up to Rick's house, look at his Jerry Lewis stuff, and we're going to try to fix that problem. So
Nice.
and if we can't, say
I'm
less.
sure both of you relate. I think all of you relate. It's such a struggle making these recipes, going into it knowing that there are going to be issues, just looking at the ingredients and the steps. And there's always the debate of, should I just trust the process, or should I try to fix this knowing what I know about old movie star recipes? I think my biggest thing that's so annoying is onions, because onions were obviously so much smaller back then.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And just with social media too, there's so much pressure to put the perfect dish.
Yeah.
Even if it turns out horribly, it's a struggle.
Well, when
And
I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, another thing is the source material that we're all working with, there were no photographs of the finished dish, were there? So we do get blind. We're just like, well, I think it should look a bit like this.
Well, when I first made Carol Lombard's cherry tart back in January, I Googled pictures of cherry tart and I see these exquisite French and I'm like, oh, those look pretty. So then I try it first, if I can, to follow the recipe exactly as written, just to see what happens.
Yeah.
And it looked so awful. I texted a friend pictures and she's like, oh, you burned your pizza. I was like, oh, it's a cherry tart. And she's like, that looked like one to me. I'm like, okay, that didn't go well. And I finally, another friend was like, there's this thing called cherry coffus, and it's close enough. And I don't think Carol would care. Make that instead. So I made that instead, and that was a much better alternative for me.
Carol has quite a few recipes. I swear, I sent one to my sister last month. She had a recipe for lettuce soup.
I saw that. I was afraid.
I found it in your lovely little archive of pre-code actresses. And oh my goodness, I will never make it, but it looks terrible. It's basically lettuce and water.
Oh, geez. That's so questionable. I've told the story before, but I didn't know what sweetbreads were when I started this whole thing. And I just thought it was sweet bread that was sweet, but I didn't know
Oh
that.
no.
Because I found this William Powell recipe and I love him and I got all excited and I called a friend and I was like, well, it says to soak the bread of the sweet bread underwater for like an hour, but then the bread's gonna fall apart if I do that. And she's like, Carrie, you don't know what sweet bread is, do you? I'm like, yeah, bread that's sweet. She's like, no, it's not, Carrie. And then when she explained to me it was cow intestines, I'm like,
They're actually really good.
William Powell.
They're actually really good. I went around and I worked really hard to find sweetbreads. I had to special order it from my grocery store and I made 2 sweetbreads recipe. And I'm like, too bad they're hard to find because I would eat these because they taste like chicken breast with a little bit of shrimp flavor. They're very mild. Like I'm trying to train myself to eat guts because because so many vintage recipes rely on them.
Can I use
So
that quote? I'm trying to train myself to eat guts because
Yes,
that's like
that's
the most
mine.
thing I've ever heard a person say before.
yeah,
What
that's
are we
why.
doing with our lives, ladies? What are we doing with our lives? We're training
Yes.
ourselves to eat guts because
Yes. Well, I'm preparing for the zombie holocaust too.
The things that we do for classic film stars, honestly.
You found sweetbreads for tea and you made these dishes.
Yes, and I really actually like them because, like I said, they're very delicate. They don't have that because you know, the what we call variety meats that they called during World War II, the euphemism. Um, they have kind of a musty flavor oftentimes that people like, particularly liver has that particular mustiness that is difficult to eat. Sweetbreads don't have that. So they taste a lot cleaner. They're just hard as anything to find. I had to special order them and get like 4 packages. I mean, I had to buy a lot. So I'm like, okay, I'm making a lot of these things. But yeah, so I did it. I also did Gary Cooper's chicken livers, and those were really good.
Chicken livers is a little more understandable, I want to say.
Yeah, they're milder. They're easier to find too. But yeah,
Mhm.
and I haven't done heart yet. Gizzards I still can't do. I you know, I've got my anatomy going. Yeah.
I have learned so much today. Oh my God.
I think we should do one of these, a challenge. When we're done on the guacamoles, we should find the most revolting movie star recipes.
And
we
like
can
present
find
it, like show and
challenge.
tell.
Challenge each
Yes.
other to do it.
So much fun doing these because, you know, pandemic has been so rough on all of us and I live alone too. So I've had some really dark nights of the soul and it's given me something to focus on, like being able to come up with, pick the recipe I'm going to do it. Do I know a collector or a friend that's written about, or do I know people I can have a great conversation with and then test cooking? It's honestly, it's distracted me and given me so much to kind of pour myself into when I'm not working or worrying about stuff. And I'm just having a blast. I'm gonna keep doing it because I'm having so much fun. Let's do this, ladies. The most Hollywood Kitchen presents the most revolting ever, or something.
We should do that next Halloween, like a horror.
Oh, I have to show you guys. Hang on, I'll be right back. I'll be right back.
Talk amongst ourselves about the most horrific thing we've tried. I'm trying to think.
So this wasn't horrific, but I know we were on the subject of William Powell recipes. I would be remiss if I didn't mention, I mean, honestly, my background with old movie star recipes is I found Jenny's blog when I was 18. And this was long after I got into old movies. And I was like, I wonder if, you know, because I did not know how to cook. I couldn't cook anything. I'd never tried any recipes. Nobody taught me how to cook. And when I was 18, I was like so obsessed with these stars. I was like, I wonder if any of them have any recipes. So I Googled it and I found Jenny's blog. And the first recipe that I ever made was William Powell's Petruskis.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I was like, it's like this for people who probably don't know. It's like a puff pastry with some kind of cream cheese filling. It was so long. That was the only time I ever made it. But yeah, I have to give Jenny credit because without her, I would not be doing this. That's for sure.
Oh,
Jenny,
you're so sweet. I couldn't cook before I started this either. I had no idea.
I love that we have that in common.
You have been so patient with me. I have asked you, like when I totally burned and cratered the Shirley Temple recipe, you bailed me out, emailed me. And you
Every time I have a new celebrity obsession, I'm emailing Jenny. I'm like, does Monty Clift have a recipe? Does Mary Carlisle have a recipe? She always comes through with them.
Do you ever go on Lantern, Samantha?
Mm-mm.
Oh my God. Okay, I have to introduce you to Lantern. It's a mediahistorydigital.org or something. You can search all the classic Hollywood fan magazines from like the silent era early on to like the 70s or something. And a lot of those magazines had recipe columns. And this website is so addictive. Sometimes I'll sit down and be like, all right, I got 30 minutes. And next thing I know, 5 hours have gone by and I'm like, holy crap, I have to go to bed. But you can actually Google and search stuff. You can do screenshot. It's the gift that keeps on giving. I will have to. Here's the book I want to show you guys. It came from the kitchen. Last Halloween, I wanted to do like Boris, Bela, Lon Chaney Jr., all that. And I came across this cookbook and it's got modern day horror films, classic horror films. And the two guys who wrote it, I think they were also producers. So they knew a lot of these stars. And there's British stars in here, Jenny. And they share reminiscences about like, oh, when Bella and I were in New York and we were at the deli, this is what he ate. And it's so much fun. And it's got little filmographies. It's got notes. It's got like, it's really cool. And I located this for like $20 used on Amazon. You can also find it on eBay. Just saying.
Nice.
That's where I found my Lon Chaney Jr. stew that I made last October. I found the Bela Lugosi Hungarian recipe that I made. So this is really cool, by the way.
Tip.
It's actually, it's funny because I too, every Halloween for the column, I've been wanting to do some kind of horror star. I've covered Boris. I went through, I believe I did like Veronica Lake for November. I try to do the themes. And I would love to do an Elsa Lanchester recipe. I was trying to find more of like the women of horror. And that's when I did Gloria Stewart. I did that for one Halloween. And that's when I made the cream vermouth. That was so bad.
I can't find Elsa Lanchester in here, but there's got to be something floating around on her.
I think I've got something.
I'm sure. I was going to say, I know Jenny has everybody.
Yeah, I checked the spreadsheet. I'm sure. I think I have got something for her. I haven't.
We need to represent the horror ladies too.
Yeah, true.
Okay, maybe October we could either do the women of horror and do a bunch of these, or like the world's worst celebrity recipe ever.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much we can do that would be so fun.
It'd be fun.
The possibilities are endless. I mean, Jenny's been doing this for years. I've been doing this for years. You've been doing this for a year. It keeps going.
Yeah,
and I keep finding new and things like all the time. And then people send me stuff too, like, oh, hey, I found this. I know you're into this stuff. And it's like, oh, one of the episodes I did the food wasn't the worst, but the episode was a little challenging. When restrictions started at first lifting and went to Christina Rice's house. Christina Rice is Jane Russell and Anne Dvorak's biographer. And her house is like an Anne Dvorak museum. So I went over there. They were doing all this massive construction and drilling next door. So trying to do an episode with that going on. Her two dogs go ballistic at me and they're barking and jumping. So the husband's wrangling the dogs. And then we're trying to line up all the posters and we're making a waffle recipe that we found for Anne Dvorak and showing the posters and stuff. And Christina's daughter disliked the waffles so badly, she ate it on camera and then ran just off camera throwing up. So I'm kind of sitting there, so 1932, Anne Dvorak, I don't eat this waffle good. And her daughter's like,
Oh my goodness.
But Christina and I just kept a straight face and kept trying to go.
It's funny because I had Christina on the podcast on Ticklish Business, and that is quite possibly the episode that I'm the proudest of, because I was interviewing her. We talked about Jane Russell and her life and how she was perceived as this sex symbol and whether that was actually the case or not, and how she stood up for herself and all of the things that she went through. And we were really able to hit a lot of those harder topics, feminism. We discussed her abortion and all kinds of really juicy stuff. So I love talking to Christina, and I love Jane Russell too. She got me even more into Jane Russell and Anne Dvorak.
Yeah, it's funny because I kept finding recipes on Jane Russell, and every time I text them to Christina, she'd text me back lies. She'd be like, oh. I'd be like, I know, I'm just sending it to you. And then finally, I sent her kind of a list when we did our Jane Russell episode, and I'm like, okay, here are all the Jane things I found. And she's like, no, shouldn't make any of this stuff. I'm like, I know. And we talked about she goes, Jane kind of liked to clean up though. Maybe we could just sit on camera and do dishes. Like clean up dishes. And we talked about doing that. And then I'm like, well, technically it's kind of sort of a food thing. And I kind of feel like we should sort of make a food thing. And so then this is where you're going to love this media history project, Samantha. There was a whole spread on Jane Russell in The Outlaw and how much Jane learned about Mexican cooking from the villagers in Mexico while making The Outlaw. Wow. And there's all these Mexican food recipes. And I sent that to Christina and she's like, hardy harsh. There's no way she was like hanging out in the village learning how to make beans in Mexico. That's not possible. And I'm like, I know. But there was a recipe for Mexican hot chocolate. And Christina's like, okay, that is pretty foolproof. I think we should just make the Mexican hot chocolate or something. So that's what we wound up like making, because we figure, okay, if Jane had to have made any of these under duress, that might have been the one.
It's the funniest thing, knowing these stars, loving these stars, seeing all these stars recipes while knowing that they didn't know how to cook. I was just talking about Barbara Eden, and she has a couple recipes floating around, but then I also found out that she appeared on Worst Cooks in America, the reality TV show. She's like burning things and her casserole looks disgusting. And June Allison was another star who couldn't cook. She has some recipes floating around. So it's really entertaining, that little bit of separation.
Yeah.
My Norma Shearer collecting friend, he's like, she probably didn't even know where the kitchen was. Give you one idea, Carrie.
I want to believe that about Norma Shearer, but I also believe like for the publicity, she would get behind all of these recipes that I found of her. Like there are so many Norma Shearer recipes, and it makes me so happy because I love her.
She's probably one of the most ubiquitous stars. I found in the Media History Project, I found an article that was about Norma Shearer, and she's making the Barretts of Wimpole Street. And while on set of making this film, she wins a pie contest, and she's presenting her pineapple pie that she made, and she's in full makeup, hair, and costuming, like with her pineapple pie. And it's so funny. Oh my gosh.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, she's one of the most ubiquitous ones, I would say, Norma. And I think Mary Pickford's pretty ubiquitous. Norma Shearer is certainly very ubiquitous. So I've only found one or two on Marilyn Monroe, oddly enough, though.
I've only found the one stuffing recipe. That's the only one that I found that's like truly attributed to her. And I have made it a couple Thanksgivings and I love it.
I tried to make it and I burned it and it didn't.
You know what? That's the problem with the recipe itself though, because I learned that the first time that I made it. I also made it in a very shallow dish. Like the dish was only this like thick and it was very flat. And I burned it the first time. So yeah, I like a thicker dish, have the cooking time, and it turned out really well.
This past Thanksgiving, I got Kristen Tower Rolls, Catherine Grayson's granddaughter, and she sent me Catherine's original stuffing recipe that she made every Thanksgiving, like for her as a little girl. And I was like, and that was phenomenal. Oh boy, did she know her stuff. Right after we got off Zoom, I ate like the whole pan with my friend Mary, and then we got back on Zoom with her, and she's like, what happened to this food? And I was like, we ate it all in the 5 minutes between ending this call and starting the next call. It was really good. It was hard to find chestnuts, though. You had to have chestnuts for this one. So I had to go to like 3 different grocery stores in town to find chestnuts, because it's not so much of a thing, I guess.
It is in mine. Every Thanksgiving, every year, I see like they have these huge, like those cardboard, things of chestnuts.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's like weird that I couldn't find sherry, but there's always chestnuts.
Ritzy, how you doing over there?
Oh, just having a little coughing, sorry.
Oh, no
So I kept
problem.
myself politely muted.
No problem at all.
Sorry.
Well,
But
ladies, this
no,
was so
it's
much fun. I really had a great time with you guys. I love talking about celebrity recipes and our adventures and journeys in making all of these. And any final thoughts either of you would like to share about Boris, Gloria, or celebrity recipes in general? Jenny? Samantha?
I love them both. I think the Boris was definitely the winner, but I would recommend both. If you like Gloria Stewart, I think this is an easy one to make. It had that heat there that I think the Boris one is missing a little bit. So if you like the kick, maybe go for the Gloria. But I'm really excited to make all of the other recipes. I'm excited to see which one is the best, because right now the Vincent Price recipe is my go-to, or the Ramon Navarro are my go-to guacamole recipes when I make it. So we'll see if there's one that becomes my new recipe.
And if we can do the Ramon Navarro one on Zoom, I'm friendly with a Ramon Navarro collector who lives like 20 minutes away.
That's
He's
so
got this
exciting.
killer collection. And
I'm
it's-
really getting into him.
yeah, so I don't know if you guys would mind if we had him drop in and Zoom and
Yeah,
That'd be
definitely.
fun.
I kind of like show and
Definitely.
tell. It's fun to,
Yeah, I think getting into the history of the stars is so important. And having the recipes really contextualizes it, I think. It has, something physical that they've sort of left behind.
yeah. And I love exploring kind of the diversity of because Hollywood is the world is such a melting pot, and of all the people that came to Hollywood from England, Germany, and Hungary, and just all these parts of the world, and they brought the cuisine with them, and I love kind of talking about that too, because that influence on food, the influence on movies, on art, fashion, culture, it's all kind of intermixed, and it's so much fun to explore that.
Yeah, definitely.
Jenny, Fritzy, any final thoughts?
Oh, no, this was really fun, but I think the value of celebrity recipes, the truth is almost beside the point. It's really about how they're trying to present themselves, how the studio's trying to present them.
Yeah.
So it's, I always kind of assume that they're not telling the truth. And even Clara Bow just openly said, oh yeah, my cook gave me this recipe, enjoy, I like it.
Bruce Brooks said from the beginning, the truth was not in them.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's like, it's not really about authenticity, or we're looking at, this is part of the hoopla. This is part of the whole kind of the image that they were trying to build. The women had to be domestic. So of course, Jane Russell would go off and learn how to cook Mexican food while she was on set. And of course, all these stars have just all these recipes just right in their little pockets that they know exactly how to do, and don't, they didn't just copy it from a cookbook. No. So I think that's the fun of it, is kind of putting ourselves in the mindset of the fans and the publicity department at the same time, and kind of looking at it from both sides. So that's what I enjoyed about it.
And I think it normalizes them, because Norma might have been dripping in diamonds and doing love scenes with Clark Gable in Adrian gowns, but darn it, she had to slave over a hot stove for Irving and those kids when she got home. So it kind of makes the average woman, I would assume at the time, think, oh, I can relate to Norma. I'm trying to take care of the family and make dinner. And it kind of probably makes them relatable in a way that they actually weren't, maybe.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. Not only that, but I think a lot of people relate to the experience that we've gone through back then. And I think, they're like, hey, I'm a woman. I don't know how to cook. I don't know what to cook. I mean, recipes weren't as, readily available back then as they are now with the internet. So I'm like, I can imagine myself easily in the 30s being like, I don't know what to make my husband for dinner. What does Norma Shearer make her husband for dinner?
It's good enough for Irving Thalberg. It is good enough for you.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much. I have had the best time. We need to do this so much more often.
Yes, anytime.
Definitely. It's been so much fun.
Yes. Well,
Thanks for
I
having
will
me.
post a final blog either tonight or tomorrow, and I'll list all of you. If you could send me a mini bio, I'll list links to your stuff that you do, where people can find you. And let's do this a lot more, ladies. This has been wonderful.
Yes, we'll get
Thank
through
you.
the bracket slowly but surely.
Yes. And there's no time frame. It doesn't technically have to be done by the end of March. We can do just
No.
whatever we want. So.
Yeah.
All right.
More
ladies.
guacamole. More guacamole.
We don't have enough as it is.
Exactly.
Well, keep joining us for more food, fun, and film history from Hollywood Kitchen, Silver Screen Toppers, Cooking with the Stars, Movies Silently, the super friends of celebrity recipe making. Goodbye.
Bye.